Hey everybody, I hope you're all doing well. As always, I'm here with an update on what has happened in Washington, D.C. this week. So let's get started with all of it. So this week in the House, we started a process called Recisions. Now this is the legal way for Congress to reduce spending by canceling already allocated funds that we don't believe are needed or that are in the best interest of the United States of America, i.e. we think that spending these dollars would be a waste, so we want to claw those dollars back from the agencies that have those dollars. So the President of the United States, he proposes these cuts to Congress in what's called a Recisions package, and I'm especially excited for this specific rescission package, as the majority of it was wasteful spending that we identified on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Now, we on the committee have made it a priority to root out the wasteful spending that's run rampant in the State Department under USAID and under Secretary Blinken and the Biden administration. You've heard seen the videos of the things that I'm pointing out that they've been going out there wasting your money on. But with this rescission package, we now have a path forward to claw back billions of dollars. We no longer fund programs for LGBTQI in the Balkans or LGBTQI in Uganda or the Caribbean. We are no longer going to spend $3 million to make a Sesame Street Iraq program. With this package, we're cutting what doesn't align with American interests or is an absolute waste of your money. We're refocusing on what our diplomacy should be. Things that make the United States of America the partner of choice instead of these programs that the Biden administration was running that made countries hate us, want nothing to do with that diplomacy, and made us a pariah. Now, I hope to see these rescissions get to the House floor for a vote as soon as possible. I want to switch gears here and talk about something else. I also sat in the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee this week, and we were working specifically on the subcommittee for Coast Guard and Maritime, reviewing what's going on with Coast Guard operations and their structure. Now, during that hearing, I was able to speak with the acting commandant of the Coast Guard, Admiral Lundy, now on critical issues such as national security, defending our country's coastline, curbing illegal immigration and migration, stopping the flow of drugs and migration across our southern borders. These are all things that we're dealing with. This is the 5 minutes that he and I spoke about, but you can look and see that hearing if you want to see even more about what he was speaking about. As you look at that, I've got to know a lot of my coasties over the years. I live in Fort Pierce. We have a small Coast Guard station in Fort Pierce there. Great individuals, and so I would just take that opportunity to thank them for their service as my neighbors, friends and neighbors that have worked there. To move a little bit more specifically to some of those threat profiles, what's the greater threat profile going on right now, given, I don't want to say change in operations since the change of presidency, but the change in the way those operations are being enforced. You have the same core mission sets that you had them, but new president, new way of operating. So has the threat profile changed in terms of individuals attempting to come across our borders and the volume of people coming across our borders? Has that volume changed?
Well, in some ways it's changed, Congressman. So we've seen a drop in attempted illegal maritime migration from Cuba and Haiti. But the conditions inside those countries that would drive migration have not changed. So our strong enforcement presence is keeping that pressure for attempted movement of illegal migration into the U.S., particularly South Florida, that's keeping that at bay.
And any change or not change with the threat profile for drugs?
We still are concerned about the movement of drugs toward Florida and the rest of the southern border, sir. There is record cocaine production in Central and South America. And so as we ratchet down pressure on certain parts of the southern border, like the land portion, we expect to see and have seen increased movement and pressure by those cartels to try and move drugs and people by maritime means. And so that's why our increased presence off of California and then off of Texas and the Gulf of America is so critical to addressing and making sure that those cartels are not successful in moving those threats along the maritime side.
Speaking of water, I also introduced 3 pieces of legislation this week to protect Floridians from toxic water. Now, our goal, always 0 discharges. We are not going to stop fighting until we get to that point. No more toxic water, no more water that we don't want flowing into our waterways, into our coastal estuaries. But in the meantime, We're going to do everything possible to protect the health and the safety of those in our community. So let's talk about these three bills that I introduced. The Stop Poisoning Florida Act would very specifically prohibit discharges from Lake Okeechobee at Port Mayaca Lock and Dam or the St. Lucie Lock and Dam when the water exceeds the toxicity level that the EPA has determined is too toxic for human contact. That seems really common sense. I've been working on this for a long time, but you all know that there's a grasp on the committees here by the sugar industry and others, which often results in these pieces of legislation that are so common sense for human health not actually going through. Now, the Toxic Health Threat Warning Act, specifically, this one would require the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to notify the public and the affected local governments if the water to be released from the flood risk management project is contaminated with cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria, that's the blue-green algae that you'll see cover 80–90% of Lake Okeechobee, often in the summertime, and hopefully they don't have to discharge that water out into our coastal estuaries. There's never a good reason for them to do, but hopefully they don't decide that there's a reason for them to discharge that toxic water out. Whatever they do, we're always fighting that, because no matter what, we should never have to receive their garbage, their toxic water. They shouldn't get to pollute our coastal, beautiful Bahama blue estuaries with their toxic blue-green cyanobacteria algae. Now, because the least they can do is give us a heads up if they're going to do this, that's what that bill is about, making sure that we are notified of the poisonous water that they may be releasing into our communities. We always try to make sure that this never happens, but that's what the bill is about, making sure that there's actually an appropriate notification if in fact that's going to take place. Now finally, the Protect Florida Act will amend the Army Corps operational priorities to include public health in addition to existing charges of flood control, navigation, water supply, enhancement of fish and wildlife and recreation, and these other things. We want to add that to it. Finally, on the House floor this week, we voted to support our career and technical education graduates and small business through the Connecting Small Business with Career and Technical Education Graduates Act of 2025. That's a whole lot of words for what does it do? This legislation, it connects eager graduates with hiring managers who are struggling to find skilled workers. That's the point of the legislation. So we've seen success with these programs right here in Florida's 21st Congressional District with high school CTE programs, providing graduates with industry-recognized certificates, work-based learning, and college credits, but we need to be giving these opportunities to students across the country, not just in our district. We want to see it go on in other places as well. So I also joined my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to pass legislation combating the growing opioid epidemic and restoring safety in our communities. The Support for Patients and Communities Reauthorization Act of 2025. It's a major step forward for families across the country who are affected by this crisis, and the dedicated individuals who work in the medical and recovery field. I'm going to keep fighting on all of these issues, keep fighting for those that are battling addiction, for their families and the values that lead to recovery. Responsibility, faith, community, these are things that we can all agree, hopefully, work to help curb this epidemic. Now, passing this bill, it means that we're one step closer to restoring safety and restoring hope for so many of these families that are affected in that way. On that note, as always, it is an honor to serve you. Look forward to seeing you all around home. Look forward to seeing you all around town. I wish you all the best, and you all take care. Hey everyone, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, please click like and subscribe. I will be back on YouTube with more exclusive content, so stay tuned.